You're not imagining it. Food didn't just get more expensive, it started getting smaller at the same time. And that combo hits different because you feel it immediately. Less food, same hunger, bigger receipt.
This was the breakfast sandwich. It was about the size of a canned biscuit that you bake at home.
Yep, that's the whole story in one shot. A breakfast sandwich that looks like it's been through a dryer cycle for $4.19. And here's what makes it so annoying. It's not just prices went up, it's that your brain is expecting sandwich, and your hands get sample size. This is the new normal. You pay real money prices for "is that it" portions.
$4.19. Shrinkflation is real.
And once you notice it once, you start seeing it everywhere. Not just in restaurants, in the stuff we buy every week too. Because companies learned a trick. If they make the product smaller quietly, a lot of people won't catch it until later.
Here are the most embarrassing examples of shrinkflation. Excel Gum turning 1/10 of their product into a thumb grip to make it easier to hold your gum. Toblerone putting more space in between their chocolate mountains.
Look at what's happening here. It's not just smaller, it's smaller on purpose, designed to look normal at first glance. Extra space in packaging so your eyes think you're still getting the same amount. Thinner layers, smaller packets, hollow containers, all the tiny changes that add up. And the wild part is, this isn't about luxury items. It's gum, lunch, toothpaste, drinks. Stuff people don't buy for fun. They buy because they need it. So when it shrinks, it's not just a ripoff. It's your daily life getting more expensive, one sneaky change at a time.
Lunchables reducing almost all the cheese located in their pizza meal. Ramen noodles shrinking the flavor packets. Superglue containers having an empty shell in the middle.
And this is why people are so angry, because the issue isn't only the price tag, it's the feeling that you're being played, like the store is daring you to notice. That's the reaction everybody has now. Not, wow, prices went up, but where did the food go? Because when portions shrink, you don't feel like you spent more. You feel like you got robbed quietly. And once you start looking closely, you realize this isn't a one-time thing, it's a pattern. When prices rise, most people can cut back. But for families, the most expensive stuff is the stuff you can't cut. Milk, eggs, diapers, baby formula, basic dinners. The pain isn't theoretical, it's daily. And that's the part that gets ignored when people talk about inflation like it's just a chart. Grocery bills aren't optional, and for a lot of households, the fridge is the first place the crisis shows up.
This is really stemming from rising food prices and inflation, which have made groceries more expensive and in some cases even difficult for some people to afford.
The scary part is when harder to afford becomes you start making choices no family should have to make. Even if inflation slows, families don't suddenly get refunds for the last few years. Improvement can still mean your weekly total keeps climbing, just not as fast.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that in 2025, food prices will rise by another 2.2%. But that's actually a sign of improvement. That means that the inflation is slowing down.
Small percentages sound harmless, until you remember what they're stacked on top of. That's why a 2% bump now hits harder than it used to, because your normal grocery bill is already inflated. The baseline is higher, so the pain is higher.
2% increase today is a higher dollar amount than it was a year ago and certainly 5 years ago because the base has increased. So even though the rate of increase has come down, people are paying more for their groceries even though that rate of increase has moderated some.
Families don't feel inflation as a number. They feel it as, the same cart costs more, and I'm carrying less. And wages don't magically rise in sync with prices. A household budget isn't elastic, especially when rent, gas, and groceries are all pulling at it at once. So when the price moves but the paycheck doesn't, families don't adjust, they lose ground.
Wages are not gonna automatically keep pace with the price of goods. So in the short run, the supply of something like garden gnomes will react quickly to a change in price. But my yearly gnome budget isn't gonna budge, throwing our economy all out of whack. At least for a little while.
Swap garden gnomes for groceries and it becomes brutal. You can't negotiate your kid's dinner. And sometimes it's not just inflation, it's supply getting tighter. When access changes, prices jump, and everyday food becomes special occasion food. Families don't just pay more, they're pushed into cheaper, less healthy options.
A staple species on WA seafood menus, local suppliers warn could become a delicacy not everyone can afford. A flow-on from the state government's January 1 demersal fishing ban.
That's the squeeze. Prices keep stacking, essentials can't be cut, and incomes don't keep up. For families, inflation isn't an economics term, It's the moment you realize the basic life is starting to feel out of reach. Wall Street calls it volatility. Regular people call it Wednesday, because the squeeze doesn't show up as a red candle on a chart. It shows up as a cart you can't afford.
The market sell-off continuing this week as investors anxiously await Nvidia's earnings. And of course, we have a delayed US jobs report coming out later this week.
Listen to how calm that sounds. Investors are anxiously awaiting. Meanwhile, families are anxiously calculating. Again. Not should I buy the dip? Can I buy dinner? When the job report hits, people on TV will treat it like a scoreboard. But for a lot of households, the score is already ugly. Wages didn't keep up, rent didn't chill, and groceries turned into a monthly boss fight. They say that during lockdowns, people still saved cash. When the lockdowns lifted, people had a bunch of money they hadn't spent and wanted to spend it. Demand for products and services skyrocketed. When demand outpaces supply, prices go up. The biggest piece is that to avoid economic disaster, the Fed printed about $7 trillion. That explanation is real. Demand surged, supply chains lagged, and money flooded the system. Prices would rise. But here's the part that turns inflation into hardship. Prices jumped fast, and the landing wasn't equal. If you owned assets, you had a cushion. If you lived paycheck to paycheck, you ate the shock raw, every week at the register. And once prices reset higher, they don't politely come back down just because your bank account begs.
Yeah, I think this is the story over the last couple of years where you've really seen that you've got this two-speed economy where if you look at the NASDAQ, it's done very well. If you look at the Russell 2000, it's done okay, but not as well as the rest of the US market.
Two-speed economy is a polite way of saying one world is doing fine and the other is drowning quietly. The top speed is stocks, tech, portfolios, strong consumer spending. The slow speed is skipping meals, shrinking portions, downgrading brands, stretching essentials, praying the car doesn't break. That gap is why people feel like they're losing their minds, because the headlines don't match their fridge. It seems like everything from food to cars to electronics to homes have skyrocketed in price since 2020. What's the underlying cause here? Why or how are people still able to buy these things for their inflated prices? Underlying cause? It's a stack, not a single villain. A money and demand shock, stimulus plus pent-up spending plus supply issues. A profit and pricing moment where companies learned people would still pay and kept pushing. A two-speed split. Asset owners and high earners stayed strong, everyone else got squeezed. And how are people still buying? 3 big reasons. Not everyone is broke at the same time. A smaller group with more money can keep prices high for everyone. Debt is doing the heavy lifting. Credit cards, financing, buy now, pay later, people aren't always affording it. They're spreading the pain. Essentials aren't optional. You can delay a phone upgrade. You can't delay groceries forever, so you end up with a country that looks fine on paper while households are getting hollowed out in real life.
And so at the moment, we see this as being a natural pullback in a bull market here.
Natural pullback is market language, but the household version isn't natural. It's relentless. Because when your costs climb faster than your income, you don't just cut luxuries. You cut stability, you cut nutrition, you cut breathing room. And that's when a society starts doing desperate math. Not because people got worse, but because life got more expensive than the rules were told to live by. Walgreens CEO says stopping shoplifting is like a hand-to-hand combat battle. And that sentence tells you everything. They're not talking about customers anymore. They're talking about targets. Because once you frame shopping like a street fight, the next move is obvious. Turn the store into a cage and call it safety.
You may have seen something like this yourself while out shopping. Big-name retail stores like Walmart and Target are putting everyday items, including deodorant, under lock and key to prevent them from being stolen.
Yeah, deodorant. Not diamonds, not electronics. When the most normal stuff gets locked up, it's not just anti-theft. It's a message. We don't trust you. And it's not even subtle. Stores are basically saying, we'd rather inconvenience everyone than fix the system.
People I spoke to say it's really disheartening to see things being locked up like that and then having to ask an employee to come and unlock the door.
She's right. It's humiliating, and it's designed that way. Because now shopping comes with this weird little ritual. You stand there, you wait, you ask permission, like you're trying to borrow your own money back. And here's the part nobody says out loud. It punishes honest people first. Thieves adapt. Regular shoppers just get annoyed and eventually stop coming.
Anybody ever seen this at Walmart? They lock the socks. Who's trying to steal that many socks?
Locked socks is peak we've given up. Because if the store is spending time and hardware protecting $8 socks, something bigger is broken. Either theft is bad enough that nothing is safe, or the store is doing security theater, making a loud show of crime to justify everything else. Higher prices, fewer workers, worse service.
Grocery prices rose 3.4% year over year last month, twice as fast as the general rate of inflation. Food like fruit, chocolate, and coffee rising the most.
And while prices climb, stores pull the same move. Instead of making things affordable, they make things hostile. You're paying more? And now you've got to negotiate to buy it. That's not a shopping experience, that's friction by design.
The Attorney General's office is doing an investigation into grocery stores spraying your produce with chemicals. They say that they are using hypochlorous acid.
And this is where trust completely collapses. Because once customers already feel squeezed and disrespected, any headline like this hits harder. It becomes, what else are they doing behind the scenes? Locking up products tells you they don't trust you. And investigations like this make shoppers wonder if they can trust them. So when the Walgreens CEO says it's hand-to-hand combat, listen closely. That mindset doesn't solve shoplifting. It rebuilds society inside a store, with you as the suspect. And the more they lock up, the more people feel like the system is rigged, which is the one thing that actually makes the whole problem worse.
Fewer people travel over the Canada-U.S. border. Duty-free shops say they are struggling and are calling on the federal government to help.
When border traffic drops, it's not just fewer weekend trips, it's a warning light. Because people don't stop crossing for fun first. They stop crossing when the math stops making sense. And right now, the math is loud. Canadians are treating the border like a price tag check. Duty-free shops are the first to feel it, because they live off impulse spending. And nobody impulse buys when they're already getting squeezed at home. This isn't a travel trend, it's an affordability migration.
If you're a Canadian thinking about going cross-border shopping in Buffalo, these are all of my go-to places with the addresses included.
Look at how serious this has gotten. People aren't saying, here's a cute day trip. They're dropping addresses like it's a survival route. When regular shoppers start making cross-border shopping guides, that's not lifestyle content. That's an informal protest, a quiet one. No signs, no speeches, just receipts.
An overall sales drop of about 30% at our store. And that's versus last year. We're down still about 40% to pre-COVID times because we hadn't fully recovered.
And here's the ripple effect nobody talks about. Price pain doesn't stay in one aisle. When households cut back, entire border economies catch the cold. This isn't about recovering from COVID anymore. This is consumers rerouting their habits permanently. Once people learn a cheaper pattern, they don't unlearn it just because somebody asks nicely. The border becomes a pressure valve, and the minute it exists, people use it.
Next up is Walmart. There's quite a few in the area, and I always stop at a Walmart to load up on Chobani yogurt and to wander the aisles to find all the interesting snacks.
Notice how normal this sounds. Not, I'm making a big statement, just, Walmart stop, stock up, explore the aisles. That's the scary part. The outrage is turning into routine, and once the cheaper side becomes the habit, the expensive side becomes the place you avoid. This isn't bargain hunting. It's people trying to breathe.
Today we're crossing through Point Edward, which is a 3-hour drive from Toronto. The border crossing was quick, and the first stop is my favorite American burger chain, Shake Shack.
When people start driving hours for basic savings, it's not a quirky trend. It's a system problem, and the border is where it becomes impossible to ignore. Before you scroll, hit like if you've ever stood in a grocery aisle doing mental math like it's a final exam. Subscribe if you want more stories where the receipts are louder than the headlines. Because what you just watched isn't cross-border shopping. It's people voting with their gas tanks. When folks are willing to drive hours just to feel normal again, that's not a quirky hack. That's a broken price reality. And here's the part that should stick. Once shoppers learn a cheaper route, they don't unlearn it. That's how habits become movements. Quiet ones. No speeches, just different stores, different brands, different patterns, and suddenly the old system starts sweating. Drop a comment. What's the one item in your area that became a straight-up joke price-wise? Milk, eggs, meat, snacks? And if you've got your own border route or budget strategy, share it. Someone watching might genuinely need it. Next video, we'll dig into the other side of this. How companies make the same price feel normal while giving you less product, or worse product, and hoping you don't notice until it's too late.